I let my unemployed sister stay for free, but after getting engaged, she blocked me, so I canceled my deal to help her fiancé with rent. All of this began around 2 weeks ago, when my sister's boyfriend proposed to her and invited her to move in with him. Then, earlier this week, she arranged an engagement party without inviting me. Things had already become strained between us, but this was the tipping point for me. We had a tremendous quarrel when I questioned her about not inviting me, especially because I had supported her and allowed her to live with me rent-free for the previous year. She informed me that an idiot like me was no help in the first place, and that she didn't want to remain in touch with me any longer since she had had enough of me. Of course, it was completely ungrateful and disrespectful. So I called off my little deal with her guy. Now she's constantly apologizing, but I don't need it. I wouldn't have had any second thoughts if it hadn't been for my mother. For perspective, Janet, my sister, lost her job as a copywriter after her firm announced major layoffs. She tried freelancing for a while, but it didn't pay well, and she eventually couldn't afford rent. She was kicked out of her flat and had to come to me. Previously, she and I had an acceptable relationship. We weren't particularly close, but I let her move in because I felt sorry for her. She was definitely going through a difficult time, and she needed all the aid she could get. Our mother lives far away with our brother, so she couldn't help, and I was Janet's only family member nearby. For the past year, I've let her remain with me without paying rent because my husband and I make enough money to cover it. She not only did not pay rent, but she also made no effort to help with home tasks or finances. We treated her like a child, and this is how she decided to repay me. Naturally, I was angry. I could tell she was doing better in the final few months since she began to spend more time with her pals. Despite this, she refused to take a job. She was either depleting her savings or spending the money our mother sent her as an allowance until she found something worth her time. I felt it was odd for a woman in her mid-20s to live like that. Since she was clearly no longer battling mentally, I began urging her to look for work. That led to a lot of arguments since she wanted me to get off her back and stop bothering her, whereas I thought she was wasting money. Our relationship deteriorated over time because she refused to listen to my advice, despite the fact that it was sound. Then last month, I discovered that I was pregnant. My husband and I decided she couldn't live with us any longer since it would be too much work, and we wanted to convert her room into a nursery. Fortunately, we did not need to have that conversation with her. Just a few days after I found out I was pregnant, Janet's boyfriend Caleb approached me and said he wanted help choosing a ring because he was about to propose. They had been together for 4 years. He had supported her through thick and thin, and he was a decent man. Janet hadn't moved in with him earlier because they worked in the same department and were laid off at the same time. He'd had a difficult year as well. However, a few months ago, he found a new job. He told me that during the first several months of the engagement, he wanted to live with his parents. Once he found an apartment he liked and saved enough money, he would move in and invite Janet to join him. His funds had suffered significantly because he was no longer living rent-free with his parents, as Janet did. Since I really wanted Janet to move out, I proposed that he find an apartment first, move in, and then propose. After that, he could invite Janet to live with him. That way, everything would go well. He was concerned about the expenses, but I promised him that I would pay Janet's half of the rent for the first few months until she found work. I devised this strategy because I desperately needed to leave the house before my second trimester began. Maybe it was a little sly, but I didn't want to jeopardize my already poor relationship with Janet by bringing up the unpleasant topic of her staying with us. This manner, everyone benefited, so I didn't give it much thought. Within a few weeks, Caleb had secured an apartment, and he and I had reached an agreement. Everything went precisely as I expected. Janet moved out just a few days after her engagement. However, once she had a ring on her finger and a place to stay, her attitude toward me shifted dramatically. I could sense something was wrong. Even then, I never dreamed she'd exclude me from her engagement party after everything I'd done for her. When I challenged her about it, she called me a fool and claimed that I had not been helpful at all. She stated that I had only put pressure on her in recent months, causing her undue anxiety, and that she was relieved to be gone. She wanted nothing to do with me anymore, so she blocked me. I was obviously irritated, so I called Caleb and informed him that I was canceling our little deal. Janet was obviously ungrateful, and I didn't need to worry about her anymore. She is an adult lady who can manage herself. She is not my child, so I do not have to feel terrible about this. This put Caleb in a difficult situation as well, but I couldn't care less at the time because I was so upset. A few days later, Janet unblocked me and began apologizing. Then, yesterday, my mother called and told me I was being really unreasonable. She claimed that what I had done was useless and weird. She informed me there was no need to manipulate Janet and Caleb only to get Janet out of my house. I could have simply sat her down and had an honest chat with her. Everything would have been plain. Perhaps I agree with that. I don't believe my mother was absolutely wrong. But, in my defense, Janet had already been quite difficult to cope with for the previous few months. I didn't want to add to my stress by attempting to have that talk since I knew Janet wouldn't take it well unless she already had somewhere to go. My mother also said that by pulling out of the transaction, I was causing unneeded difficulties for Caleb, who was absolutely blameless in the issue. However, I couldn't get myself to care about it either. My mother also stated it was embarrassing for our family, and I suppose she's correct. That is why I have been thinking about it so much. I'm torn. I don't want to back out of the transaction since that would make me a big jerk. But at the same time, I really don't want to help Janet, especially after what she said to me. She basically called me a stupid after I had done so much for her in the previous year. I'm in a huge quandary right now and desperately need some decent guidance. Am I wrong for pulling out of the deal and causing problems for my sister and her fiancé? Update 1. Thank you to everyone who reacted to my post. After much consideration, I decided to discuss it with Caleb. He is the one person I owe an explanation to in this situation. After all, he did everything I asked of him because he trusted me, and I don't want to leave him in a difficult situation. I informed him that I would continue to assist him financially, but that if Janet finds work, I would like all of the money returned. This is just a one-time favor for Janet, and I don't want to engage with her again. Even this contact was exclusively between Caleb and me. I didn't want him caught in the crossfire between Janet and myself. As I have stated, Caleb is a truly kind guy, and I don't think it's fair to leave him hanging, especially considering his financial position. He appeared relieved when I spoke with him on the phone. He informed me that he understood how furious I was, but he was grateful that I did not back out of the transaction, which would have left him in a terrible situation. He also encouraged me to make amends with Janet. But that's where I draw the line. I don't want anything to do with my family right now, including my mother. While my mother had a good point about how I could have simply spoken to Janet, told her the truth about my pregnancy, and asked her to leave, she fails to recognize that I had previously tried to be polite to Janet for a long period. Janet made things exceedingly difficult for me. Let's not forget that my mother was helping her by sending her a monthly allowance, despite my repeated warnings that this was preventing Janet from becoming independent. I cautioned her that her actions would ensure Janet never got a job or got back on her feet, but she ignored me. So I think I'm really a fool. Because, at the end of the day, I feel used by my family. Janet clearly utilized me for a rent-free place to live without contributing monetarily or assisting with tasks. My mother practically used me to support Janet while disregarding my sentiments. If she cared, she would have heeded my advice and encouraged Janet to seek a job rather than providing her with free money. She was not even enthusiastic about my pregnancy. Instead, she was more concerned with Janet's condition and did not congratulate me. Anyway, the basic line is that, while I feel horrible about what's going on with my family, I'm not going to let it interfere with my life. I'm embarking on a new path as a mother, and I'd like to start on a positive one. I do not want any negativity in my life at the moment. As a result, I have chosen to cut off all communication with my mother and sister. I'm not going to lie, it will be difficult. Aside from them, I just have my in-laws for my family. My father died in an accident when I was 7 years old, and his parents died shortly after that. We don't have much contact with his family, and I'm not close to any of my other relatives. It used to be just my mother, Janet, and I against the world. Janet and I had a close relationship as children. However, as we grew older, we became further apart. Recently, I believed we were reuniting, but then something happened. Now I think I'd be better off without them. Even though I'll be lonely, at least I won't be stressed. And even if I don't have my family with me, I have my husband, which is enough for me. Update 2. It's been 5 weeks since my last update, and my mother unexpectedly showed up today. I had the day off, so I spent it at home. I heard the doorbell ring just as I was about to leave work. I looked outside and saw my mother standing there. I was surprised because she normally prefers to stay in her hometown and dislikes traveling or spending overnight anywhere. She finds it unpleasant. Her last visit was short for one day to attend Janet's engagement party. She flew back home the next morning, so we didn't even get to meet. This time, she said that she had come because Janet wanted her to meet Caleb's parents in a more intimate environment, so they had a family meal. She traveled in just for it. Now that she knew I was pregnant, I suppose she felt compelled to pay me a visit rather than go immediately. She had been attempting to contact me on a regular basis over the last few weeks, but I had ignored her. However, now that she was standing directly outside my door, I couldn't pretend I hadn't heard the phone ring or that I was preoccupied. I had no choice but to let her inside. When we started talking, she apologized for her prior actions. However, she also felt that my behaviors were weird and needless. She said it was very typical of me to go behind someone's back and create plans only to get them out of my house when I could have had an honest chat with them. I had to explain to her that Janet and I had been having troubles for months and that I did not want to further the situation. Even then, I was trying to be a better person by avoiding drama. I had gone out of my way to assist Janet so that she did not find up in a situation where she had nowhere else to turn. That is why I had to take such precautions. She would have understood why I did this if she had checked on me as often as she did Janet. Clearly, she had no concept what things were like from my perspective. I did tell her that she was correct, as I had previously, and stated that despite our frequent fighting, I should have just informed Janet that I was pregnant and requested her to leave her room. She probably would have taken it well, And if she didn't, I should have taken my chances rather than gone out of my way to construct a living environment that favored her in order to prevent conflicts or drama, like a fool. At that time, my mother had the foresight not to say anything else and left it at that. She then moved the subject to my pregnancy, and we talked about it for a while. However, I was already getting irritated, so I was extremely dry with her. After a while, she assured me she understood why I was still unhappy with her, and that I had every right to be. However, she was the baby's grandmother and desperately wanted things to return to normal. She asked me to stop ignoring her because she wanted to stay in touch and see how my pregnancy was going. I told her I'd think about it, but right now, I just needed some space. She eventually left, and that was all. I'm not sure what to make of this conversation, but at least we got it out of the way. I'm not sure if I'll respond when she starts texting and calling again, but I might try. At the very least, I am not as upset as I was before, which is an improvement. Update 3. Hello, it's been 3 weeks since my previous update. My mother has consistently tried to contact me. I've been responding to her texts and returning her calls on and off, whenever I feel like it. I rarely answer, but I'm not entirely ignoring her like I used to. I'm still unhappy with how things turned out for my family, so I'm taking my time. She'll have to cope with it if she wants to maintain touch with her granddaughter, at least until the next grandchild arrives, if you get what I mean. Anyway, I believe the situation with my mother has marginally improved. However, my status with Janet has remained largely unchanged. We remain emotionally detached and refuse to interact with one another. I have not spoken to her since my last conversation with Caleb. Caleb did inform me that Janet has finally found work and will begin repaying me within the next few weeks. It's a relief because I had almost given up hope of seeing my money again. I'm not sure why it took her so long to get back on her feet, but I'm relieved it's finally happening. It's for her own good, and honestly, I'm just relieved that I won't have to get involved in this mess anymore. My baby is my primary priority right now. The pregnancy is going well, albeit morning sickness has already set in, which has been the most difficult challenge so far. Aside from that, I am quite delighted to become a mother. My husband, aware that I do not have a good relationship with my family right now, has gone above and above to keep me happy and distracted. His family has been tremendously supportive, particularly my mother-in-law. I consider myself really fortunate to have such a supportive mother-in-law. She has been coming over very frequently, taking care of me, making sure I don't overwork myself, and has even begun cooking for us. I can't begin to express how beneficial that has been. It makes me sad that my mother isn't doing anything for me other than attempting to stay in touch. But I suppose that's simply how she is. If Janet had been pregnant, I'm very sure my mother would have flown in and moved in with her. In that sense, I'm grateful that I'm not Janet, because I doubt I would have been able to compromise my privacy in that way. Update 4. Hello, it's been 2 weeks since my last report, and today I received my first payment from Janet. She messaged me that she had received her first paycheck a few days earlier and that she felt it was right to begin repaying me for all of the help and support I had provided her over the previous year when she was struggling. She also apologized for her past behavior and expressed her desire that we could become friends again eventually. I felt awkward and emotional after reading that. I thanked her and told her I desired the same thing, and that was all. There are still more payments to make, but I hope she does not send any more emotional messages like this. Honestly, they just make me feel horrible about everything that happened, which I don't need right now. I simply want to be happy. I want to appreciate this period in my life. I do not wish to linger on the past. Speaking of which, as my pregnancy is advancing, my mother called me earlier this week to see how I felt about her visiting every other weekend. She said she could take the bus and travel on alternating weekends to see me and help me. Flights would be prohibitively expensive for frequent travel, so the bus would have to suffice. It's only a 6-hour drive from her home to mine, so she claimed it wouldn't be too difficult. I considered it, but ultimately declined. First and foremost, no matter how much she wants to come see me and help, I know it would be extremely uncomfortable for her to travel in that manner owing to her back and knee problems. That's why she doesn't travel often, and when she does, she takes flights, even if they're only 45 minutes. I don't want to cause her any discomfort. That was one of my reasons for saying no. The other reason is that, while I appreciate the invitation, I know that if she comes over, she will want to remain with me now that I am pregnant. She usually stays in hotels because she enjoys the luxury, and it makes her trips feel like vacations. However, the situation has altered. I know she'll want to stay at my place, but I don't want to give up my privacy, especially with the baby on the way. Both my spouse and I work hard, and we rarely have time to see each other throughout the week. I'm attempting to finish up all of my work before leaving on maternity leave, and he's working extra hours for a raise. Weekends are all we have, and I do not want to waste them. However, I knew my mother really wanted to see me, so I devised another plan. I informed her that she could visit us on the last weekend of each month. My mother would no longer have to fly every other weekend and would be able to spend more time with us. We decided on this arrangement because it seemed to work for both of us. My husband and I would still have to miss one of our weekends, but since my mother was making an effort, I was willing to compromise. My mother-in-law agreed with this approach because, at the end of the day, family is vital. And as much as I tried to hide it, it was clear that I missed being on good terms with my family. Of course, what had happened was unacceptable, and I had every right to be furious. But if they were making an attempt and I wanted to give them another chance, that was excellent for me as well. So, I believe it's a terrific idea, and I truly hope I can work things out with my mother. My sister's condition is still unresolved, but I don't mind. She appears to be doing well for herself, at least, I hope so, and I am too. Right now, these minor variances don't bother me. I just want to make sure the future is a positive one. Honestly, the only thing that matters to me right now is my baby. I'm going to do whatever makes me happy because, if I'm happy, my baby is happy, or so I've heard. LOL. Update 5. Hello, it's been a few months since my previous post, and I finally have time to write because I've been busy with my baby for the past few weeks. I had my baby 3 weeks ago, and she is a complete joy. She's brought everyone together, and I couldn't be happier. My mother and I continued with the arrangement we established in my previous report. She started visiting me on the final weekend of each month. However, in the days running up to my due date, she stayed with me, which was quite pleasant. She sincerely apologized to me. She recognized that she had not been a good mother to me and that she sincerely wanted to make amends, not just for her grandson, but because it was the proper thing to do. She also informed me that she loves Janet and me equally, but that in the last year, she had been a little biased because Janet had been struggling. Perhaps that's why she asked me to be gentler with her. However, she was unaware that she was treating me unfairly. She apologized for this as well. A long time has passed, and I have resolved to forgive her. We've agreed to work on our relationship and try to improve. Janet had been paying me back in installments, and she made her final payment last month. In the midst of it all, she hadn't sent any more emotional texts than she had the first time. However, after completing her final payment, she contacted me to express her want to discuss and work things out between us. She wished to apologize for what she had done. So I decided to invite her over. When she arrived, she very much broke down and apologized. She stated that she had been in a tough emotional state, which caused her to act out. She assured me that she, not I, had been the fool. She claimed she had been ungrateful and that I did not deserve anything that had transpired. She was overjoyed that I had agreed to talk to her. So, Janet and I have agreed to try to restore our relationship. Perhaps, in time, we will be as close as we were as children. Janet has been coming frequently since my daughter was born, and my daughter adores her Aunt Janet. This makes me happy. As I mentioned earlier, my baby has actually brought everyone together. Her birth seems to have healed everything. Almost everyone was there for me while I was in labor. In the delivery room, I had my husband, his family, and my own. That day will remain the most memorable of my life. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.